Hey everyone, Professor Allen, and this is Bio 101 Lab. Well, we're on to lab number 11. That's on plants. Because of the online format, I had to completely rewrite the plant lab. It's not even the same it was last semester. I've totally redone it. So let's dive on in, shall we? So here I'm going to bring you into my overhead camera here so we can see. Here's the one in the lab book. Now, don't do the activity in this lab book, but you will need it for reference, and I'll get to that part so you understand exactly what's going on. All right, so here it is. I'm going to scroll it on up here, and there's an introduction to it. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm going to turn the page and show you what's going on here. That will be right over here somewhere. Here we go. There's a procedure here. This is not it either. But what they're talking about in this is looking up some information about a dozen plants. So here's one, Laurel Sumac, Melasma laurina. See how the scientific name is right there? You are going to need that scientific name to do the modified activity. So this is where you get it. So this is going to tell you the common name, one of the common names, because things have lots of common names, the scientific name, and then a little bit of information about it, which you could read. Not going to read it to you. Lemonade berry, Rusintegrifolia, sugar bush, rusovata. Turn the page. We have California sage brush. By the way, if something has got two words like that run together, sage brush, that means it is not a sage. It's not in the mint family. Sage brushes are all in the sunflower family. So this is a type of sunflower. Artemisia Californica, mule fat, Baccharis salicifolia, it means leaves like those of willow. Coastlife Oak, Quercus Agrifolia. Scrub oak, should say California scrub oak, Quercus Berberidifolia, quite a mouthful, eh? Black sage, which is Salvia mellifera. California buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum. Toyon, Heteromeles arbudifolia. Wait, there's more. On the next page, there's actually two more. And skip the part that says extra credit because they're not. We're skipping common horehound. It's a weed from Europe. Who cares? Wild cucumber, one of my favorite plants, Mera macrocarpus. That's a misprint. That should be macrocarpa. Anyway, and then I've also added poison oak, which is not in our book at all, but trust me, you'll learn something about it. Okay, so that's why you need to get to your lab. And let me put the printed lab book aside because I don't need it right now. I know where that stuff is. I'm going to get ready to show you another part of this. So I'm juggling lots of screens, so bear with me. And I went right past what I needed. Hang on here. There we go. Okay, so let's go back and look at that module. Here it comes. Ding, there we go. All right, so here is the module. I really hope, there it is. So it tells you don't do the exercises in the lab manual, even though you're going to need the lab manual, but don't do the exercises there. All right, please listen to me. Please do this. Okay, let's scroll on down here. Here's what you do. Grab the worksheet file, it's down below. Open it up in your PDF reader. I'm only giving you a PDF version of it this time. There is a reason. Read the lab, complete the questions. There's some questions buried in it. I'm going to show you where those are to make sure you are very clear on what I need you to do. And then there's some other stuff. Now, near the end, there's a big table, a data table that I'm going to ask you to make some sketches into. Well, where are we going to get the images? How do we know what these plants look like? I'm way ahead of you. We'll get there. So you need to make sketches there. And again, we're going to cover it by hand. I much prefer if you print this thing out and make it by hand. If you don't have a printer, fine. Grab some notebook paper or some blank paper and put the information in there. Just make your own squares on another piece of paper. It's going to take you a couple of sheets, maybe 3 sheets. But make the boxes, you'll see how big they need to be, and then write the names in as directed, make a sketch in there, totally fine to do it that way, and then use your use a smartphone camera or a camera on your computer or a regular camera and upload those pictures. You can either upload the whole thing as a PDF, fine, or you can upload it as picture files, fine. The questions, though, should be uploaded as PDF files, all right? Again, if you don't have a printer, you could just recopy those questions by hand and answer them in a handwritten document. I'm totally fine taking that for this lab. All right, head on down here. Here's the PDF file. You click on it and you'll get that worksheet, right? Only PDF. It's the only form I have there. There's no key right now. There are some really nice little short videos about some of the plants down here. You just click on the link and it will play the YouTube video. You can play it in YouTube or you can play it right here, up to you. These are by various people here in California. The very last one is done by one of my very good friends, Kevin Allison at Tree of Life Nursery in San Juan Capistrano. And he and I are independently trying to come up with more of these because I think they're really good. All right, so let me bail out of this thing and I'm going to take you into the worksheet itself, and then we'll go into a discussion that I have already written in Keynote. So let me stop the share and jump into the lab itself. Here we go. All right. I'll also show it to you on the overhead camera, but here is the document. I'm just going to page through it real briefly. So there's the first page there. We go on up. Some of it's just exactly what I showed you in the intro. There's 3 parts to it. The seed plants, we're going to look at Gymnosperms and Angiosperms. Antelope Valley, California Poppy State Reserve. What a long name, but really cool place where you can see lots of poppies. It is a sanctuary for poppies. Pretty fun. And then we'll look at seed plants, the Gymnosperms and the Angiosperms. And there's a little write-up here about the background. You can read that yourself. It's very, very abbreviated. In lecture class, you're probably getting way more detail on this stuff. I'm going to go over a little bit of it with a lot of photos and drawings too. And now there are some questions here. See how the questions are kind of buried over here? That's making sure that you're paying attention. Okay. And then there's a couple more questions here. And then we go on down, and here's the part about the Antelope Valley, California Poppy State Reserve, where you go to their YouTube site and watch one video about California poppy. It's not super long. It's actually very interesting, very nice woman who works there, who's the interpreter. She's a teacher, basically, but the state calls it an interpreter at the park and teaches you some things about the California poppy. You have to watch the whole thing in order to answer these questions that are here. So pay attention. What's nice about videos, as you know, is you can pause them, you can go back, rewatch them as many times as you want, and you'll get the answers and then fill them in here. Okay, scrolling on up. And then we're going to look at some common California plants. All right, let me go back a little bit here, and I am going to jump over to, where's my cursor? I'm going to jump over to my web browser and show you, here is that YouTube site with park interpreter, I forgot her name, Jean, I believe her name is, and there she is at the Poppy Reserve. It's a beautiful place. Been there many times, done lots of photography there. You're welcome to go there. We all own it. It's a state property. You are not allowed to trample the plants. You have to stay on the trail. They made these trails that you walk along, and you cannot go off of them. Occasionally, they catch people walking out in the middle of the poppies, laying down and taking photos of themselves and posting them to Instagram and Facebook and all that, which is illegal and destroys the plants for the whole season. It kills them. So a terrible thing. You will get a citation if you're caught doing that. Don't do that. All right. She's standing on the trail. I've done that before. If you want to take pictures of the flowers, I use a long lens so I can zoom in on them and stay on the trail. Right. Please do that. It's a beautiful place. Okay, I'm not going to play it for you because I know you know how to watch a YouTube video. The link is on the lab itself. All right, so let me stop that share and go back here. Let's go back to right here. Let's go back to the worksheet itself. Okay, there's the Poppy Reserve. There's the link right up there in the YouTube link. I'm going to move on up. And then here is information about common California plants. All right, I'm going to come back to this. First, I'd like to talk to you about plants themselves. So let's do that. And let's go switch to Keynote. And here is Keynote. So I'm not going to play this live. I'm just going to walk through a slide at a time. There's only 24 slides, I think. I really shortened it a lot. So let's have a look. Now, here's the left brain version of classification of all plants on the planet. They're in the kingdom Plantae. And here are the groups, the subgroups or clades within the kingdom Plantae. The bryophytes, I put it in quotes because it's a nickname. It's not a category at all. These are non-vascular plants, which means they don't have tubes going through their body carrying food or water. Like we have sets of tubes called the cardiovascular system. The tubes carry our blood, which carries food and water and waste products and oxygen and carbon dioxide, all kinds of stuff. We have one set of tubes. Well, many plants have two sets of tubes. One set carries food, one set carries water. And these plants, the bryophytes, liverworts, hornworts, and true mosses, they don't have a vascular system. They're very primitive. They're like a sponge. So think of a bath sponge or kitchen sponge. You take that sponge, wring the water out of it, pretend that's the plant, and you just stick it on a little puddle of water. It just soaks up the water automatically. Well, what if that puddle of water had some food in it, dissolved in water, put that sponge on there, that food dissolved in water would also go throughout the sponge. That's how these groups of plants work. Really primitive way to do it, but it works. But it limits their size, keeps them very, very small. So long time ago, some plants developed a system where they use some of their cells to kind of build little tubes. So think of them as straws, almost like our vascular system, right? Like our cardiovascular system. And so they developed a system of two sets of tubes. One set is hollow and carries water. The other set is mostly hollow and carries food. All right, so the first plants to get these were the ancestors of ferns and relatives of ferns that are cleverly called ferns and fern allies. Well, they're all extinct. So ferns and fern allies have those vascular systems in place, even though their ancestors are extinct. All right, so everything here, excuse me, ferns, fern allies, and the seed plants all have vascular systems. So one group of ferns and fern allies, don't you love that term, fern ally? It means like fern friends. The lycophytes, the club mosses, spike mosses, and quillworts. They're kind of weird looking things. Love to have time to show them to you, but we don't. The pterophytes, which include things called horsetails. Nope, not that grow on a horse. A plant called horsetail because it kind of looks like it. The true ferns and the whisk ferns. And then we have the seed plants. So seed plants have a vascular system and they produce seeds. There are two subgroups of seed plants currently alive. There used to be more, but they're extinct. So the ones that are still around are the gymnosperms. Gymno literally means naked. Sperm literally means seed. Does not mean male gamete. It means seed. And these are the cycads, the ginkgos, and conifers such as pines, junipers, cypress, redwoods, big, beautiful trees and shrubs, and the angiosperms. These are, well, angio means covered, and then sperm, of course, means seed. The covered seed plants or flowering covered seeded plants, like sycamore trees, roses, daisies, lilies, sunflowers, orchids, grasses, cattails. Wow, the list goes on. Okay, so that's the left brain version. I know some of you like to have things drawn out in words, where some of you prefer drawings like these ones. So this is the same information as a series of drawings. So here we have the ancestral green algae, the ancestors of land plants. And they reproduce by spores. And so what we had here is the origin of land plants, which means the very first algae mutants that could live on land and allow their embryo to dry out. And that's what this little one means right here. They had this mutation that allows the embryo to dry out, and that allowed them to invade land and grow on land. See, algae need to grow in water. Okay, so here are liverworts. That's an interesting looking thing. They're like this big. Here are hornworts. Same deal. Here are mosses, which are mostly about that tall and shorter. And these make up the group we call the bryophytes. And remember, that's a nickname. It's not one group. It's a nickname because these are all very primitive non-vascular plants. And then step 2 here, we had the development of a vascular system, as I mentioned moments ago. Well, what groups have vascular systems? Here we have one branch, the lycophytes, as I mentioned a minute ago, the club mosses, spike mosses, and quillworts. And there's a drawing right there of, I believe that one right there is a spike moss, or maybe a club moss. They look a lot alike. Okay, and then the other group here include the pterophytes, which are the true ferns, the horsetails, and the whisk ferns. That's down here. And then their sister group is a group that develops seeds. All right. And so the first seed plants are extinct, but the ones we have today have very well developed seeds. And so here we have the gymnosperms, right, the naked seeded plants, and the angiosperms, the covered seeded plants or the flowering plants. And there's little drawings of all of these here. Okay, so both of those cover the same information. Let's move on. Here are the seed plants. It's really what we want to concentrate on. So these are the gymnosperms in the left. The ovule, wait a minute, what's that? Okay, it's just like animal reproduction, how we have sperm cells and ovule cells. You might call ovule cells, you might call them egg cells. You can if you want, but really ovule is the technically correct word. So the males produce sperm cells and the females produce ovule cells. Does that mean plants have sex? Yes, yes it does. Plants have sex. Wrap your mind around that. Yes, they do. Okay, so in gymnosperms, the ovule is not completely enclosed by a tissue. It's not buried in something, right? Like it is in animals. It's buried inside an ovary, buried inside the body. In gymnosperms, the ovules are actually on these funny little structures. And if you can look down here, you can see this is a pine cone, for example, which is a gymnosperm, and it's got these funny little branches that go out. Now see, someone took a pine cone and just sawed it open and then made this drawing. So if you were to do that, like with this pine cone right here, you'd see that every one of these things looks like kind of a diamond shape, which we have over here. That would be this structure here, and it has an ovule sitting on its surface. And there it is in that drawing. They drew it in as blue, but this looks like a little hand here, but it's open. This is open to the outside environment. All right, so what happens with them is pollen goes blowing around, finds its way to the ovule. Pollen contains sperm cells and fertilizes it, and then that develops into a seed, and the seeds grow right on these doohickeys, which are called cone scales. Cone scales can be really interesting. They can be sharp, look like a big bear claw, we'll see in a minute, or a little prickly like that one is there, or be very smooth. They're really interesting. And that's typical for the cone-bearing plants, the pines mostly. Okay, and then the angiosperms, the seeds, I should say the ovules, are in a tissue that we call the ovary. They're buried inside an ovary, inside the flowering part of the plant. All right, more like animals. Animals' ovules are hidden inside an ovary, and the ovary is inside the body. All right, so moving on, let's go look at gymnosperms. Here's a quick and dirty tour of some gymnosperms. On the left here is something called a cycad. Now, cycad has a huge cone right in the middle, and these things can be half a meter long. They can be enormous. You can see it there in the middle. Well, cycads are either male or female. All right, so just like us, we have male body forms and female body forms. Cycads do the same thing. Their individual plants are either male or female based on what kind of flower they produce. And then here we have ginkgo. Now, who doesn't know what Ginkgo biloba is? But did you know ginkgo is a gymnosperm? It's related to pines and redwoods and cycads. And there's a picture of it producing its reproductive structures. They don't have flowers, so we can't use that word. These are the male cones. Here they're kind of long and skinny. And this branch, of course, is on a male plant. So you're not going to find the female reproductive structure there. You're not going to see her ovules. They're going to be on a totally different individual. All right, and then here's a pine. I know this pine has got kind of bluish colored needles, but that is Torrey Pine, native to San Diego. It is the rarest pine in all of North America, possibly the world, because it only lives in a little area of coastal San Diego County. There's even a state park there, Torrey Pine State Park. And there's a little population on Santa Rosa Island, one of the Channel Islands up near Santa Barbara. And it's got bluish leaves. It's just a beautiful tree. It's a big tree too. Okay, far left, we have these things called Mormon teas, which you may not have ever seen, but they also have separate male and female individuals. On the left are the male, the right is the female. And then we have my favorite gymnosperm, actually, Welwitschia mirabilis from the Namib Desert of Africa. And that's it right there. It grows really low, makes 2 leaves. Those leaves slice themselves as they age and they twist. Really bizarre plant, very interesting life cycle. They're either male or female. Over here we have firs, all right? Some people like firs. Firs are not pines, but they're related to them. And then here we have cypresses and junipers, also related. At the left, we have a cypress. The right is a juniper. The biggest difference is that cypress cones, which are round, are usually about that big. So here's my hand, about that big. And juniper cones are usually about this big. They're much smaller, about a centimeter across, maybe 2 centimeters in a big one. And they have shorter leaves usually. All right. Okay, so that's just a quick and dirty tour. Well, here we have a little bit closer look at some. Here's Abies concolor, a white fir, lovely conifer, grows in high mountains where it's really cold. Here is Pinus Toriana or Torrey Pine. There are the female, nope, those are the male cones right there. Pines are very unusual in that the male and female cones are on the same individual. On the right here, we have a very rare cypress called the Tekanti Cypress, which lives only in the northern part of Orange County up near Yorba Linda in the mountains there, excuse me, and on Otay Mesa in San Diego County, eastern San Diego County, and near the city of Tecate in Baja California. Very rare plant, beautiful plant. I've got one in my backyard. It's just fantastically beautiful, and they smell like lemon. They're just great. I like to rub the little leaves and smell them. Beautiful plant. All right, that is a gymnosperm. Now, you may have noticed this about pines, that pines have leaves that are skinny and long, and we call them needles. All right, well, not only that, but those needles are bundled together. They've got this little light brown bundle, and you can see at the base of the drawing I did here on the left. This little bundle or fascicle keeps the base of the needle kind of protected, all right? Some pines have only one needle coming out of that bundle, so we call it a one-needled pine. That's actually a group, not a species. Some have 2 needles, so they are called 2-needled pines. Some have 3 needles, like in this drawing I did, and some have 4, 5, 6 needles. And so we give them a nickname based on how many needles they have per fascicle or per bundle. And it's kind of fun to look at pines and count those needles and go, wow, I never noticed that. It's pretty fun stuff. Now, right up here in the top of this really good picture, you can see male cones. They're up here, and you can see they've got kind of a yellowy, powdery look to them, and that's because they're dropping pollen, and that's what male cones do. They drop pollen all over. If you park a car under a pine tree in the winter, because that's when the males drop pollen, you're going to come out and find your car covered in like kind of a yellowish dust. That's pollen. It's pretty hysterical when people come out and their car's covered in pollen. I think it's funny. Well, here is a great photo, not mine, I wish it were, of the branches of a plant showing this growing tip up here. Let me move my cursor quickly. There we go. And you see these kind of purpley or magenta or maroon looking, maroon's a better color here at the tip. Those are very young female cones. They're developing female cones. They're really pretty when they're young. They're normally this maroon color. And then down below, we have these older female cones that are a year old, and they're not ready to do their thing yet, not ready to pop open and release their seeds, but here they are. Those are the female cones that are about a year. And then way down here, these are male cones. See that on this arrow? They're male cones that are almost mature, which means they're almost ready to drop their pollen, which goes on the wind and goes blowing all over the place and fertilizes the female cones and leads to seed production. All right, we'll get to that part too. In fact, here it is. Okay, so here's how they reproduce. Let's use a pine as a good example of all gymnosperms. It's very similar for all of them. So here are the male cones right here, and they're releasing pollen. See that kind of yellowish dust? To take the picture, what you do is you get ready with your camera and you have a friend kind of tap the branch or tap the area, get their arm out of the way, and the pollen just goes, or if it's a windy day. More fun to have a friend do it because it's hilarious. And so there's pollen blowing all over the place. Well, that pollen blows around. It can blow for miles, by the way, and lands on these female cones. And then all you need is one pollen grain landing on one ovule, right? Here's the totally developed female cone here that's woody. They get woody as they get older. And so here's the developing seed. But if we roll back time a little bit, what happened here was pollen went down through these grooves and ended up right here next to this ovule. Now this ovule secretes a little bitty drop of sticky fluid, and that pollen grain lands there. It just falls there, thanks wind. And then that leads to fertilization of the ovule. And the ovule, then we just change its name. We call it a seed. So yeah, seed was an ovule. Okay, and then here is that cone. So as cones get older, they turn brown and they get real woody and they grow in size. Now, if we look at the cone scale here straight on, we can see that in this species, whichever one they base the drawing on, has 2 seeds per cone scale. Some species of pines have only 1 seed per cone scale. Depends on which one you're looking at. Okay, here are some cones of some of our California pines and other ones in the West. So far left is one called a gray pine. And I wish these were in color. I didn't take these, but I wish. Beautiful cone. It is a mahogany brown color. It's about, I think maybe 50% larger than a softball. So a little bit, bigger. Beautiful cone. Interesting cone scales. Way up here, we've got pinyon pine, which is little. Pinyon pine's like this big. It's a big tree, but it's got a little big cone. This is Pinus edulis because it's edible. It's edible. It produces edible seeds. Here's a side view of the same one. We call the seeds of that plant pine nuts. And there's a picture from my favorite store, Trader Joe's, all right, where they sell pine nuts, and they're from pines. And they're wonderful. You probably had them. You roast them up, you throw them on, oh my gosh, all kinds of pasta dishes. I really like them with ravioli. I'm a vegan, so I have vegan ravioli. Thank you, Whole Foods. They have the best. And roast these guys up, put a little bit of brown on them, and just pour them over the top of these raviolis. Add some pesto sauce. They have a vegan pesto sauce too. Stir it up. Oh my gosh, it's so tasty. So that is one thing we eat from pine trees. This is sugar pine, which is the world's longest cone. And it is like, do I fit on the screen? It's really long. It's longer than my arm. I've held them before. They're pretty amazing. Okay. All right, camera, you are a little blurry right now. What are you doing? Let's get sharp here. Sometimes I have to do this. There it goes. I don't know why. Okay, and then on the right, we have Ponderosa pine, which is a very uncommon pine here in the mountains of San Bernardino and San Gabriel, both those mountain ranges. They're very uncommon there. And it's kind of a reddish brown cone that's not very big. It's about this big usually. And then over here, we have Eastern white pine. I don't know how big that is. Never been back east. And red pine. I don't know that one either. Just an interesting smattering of pine cones. Okay. My favorite, though, my favorite cone is produced by the Coulter pine, Pinus coulteri, named for Irishman Thomas Coulter, who was a botanist in the early 1800s, and for which this tree is named. Now, I normally just have this picture on the right that I took but you don't get scale of how big those cones are. So today I found an article online from the city of Cambria up in San Luis Obispo County with someone holding a bunch of Coulter cones. So what you should do is kind of get in the same pose as this person. I don't know why they cut their head off, but they did. I didn't do it. So you kind of act like you're holding one, and it's going to be, from that picture, it's going to be like this. Looks like it's this big. Looks like it's from that person's belly button up to about their armpits. They're enormous. The nickname for these cones is Widowmaker, because if they fall on your head, your spouse is going to be a widow. So the saying that we use when talking about these is Coulter pines have killer cones. See all the hard K sound there? Coulter pines have killer cones. That's how you remember which one it is. They are massive. They're so heavy and sharp, and those cone scales have a big curve in them like a bear claw. And I've actually seen tourist retail outlets taking a Coulter pine, disassembling it, taking those cone scales and drilling a hole through the base and making a necklace and selling them as bear claws. Well, I'd rather they do that than kill a bear. So it just cracks me up to no end. They're that big. They're the size of bear claws, each cone scale. They're massive. Actually, they're bigger than a bear claw. Okay, so much for gymnosperms. Let's take a look at angiosperms, all right? The flowering plants or the covered seeded plants. Many different groups of angiosperms. Like top left, we've got pond lilies, which, by the way, aren't lilies. They're not lilies at all. So when writing that name down, you have to run it together and make it one word, pond lily, or hyphenated pond hyphen lily. But they are not related to true lilies. That yellow one in the middle center bottom is a true lily. They don't look a thing like them. All right, we have lower left, we've got magnolias over here. We've got charming centauri, one of my favorite wildflowers around. The lower right here, that is weeds, Mariposa lily. And there you go. Why would they name it a weed? It's so pretty. No, it's not named after being a weed. It's named after a man whose name was Amos Weed, who made carriages in the 1800s. And he found this thing and happened to know a botanist in San Diego and took it to him and said, this is just such a pretty flower. It's near my shop. And Daniel Cleveland, the botanist, looked at it and went, wow, that's something. And so either Daniel or a specialist named it after Mr. Weed. And that's why it's Weed's Mariposa lily, because it's in the Mariposa lily group. On the far right, we have the most beautiful wildflower in all of California. That's right. This is a sunflower named after me. Yes, because I discovered it. It's called Allen's daisy, and it lives only here in Orange County. It is a listed rare species. No, you have not seen it in someone's garden. No, you have not seen it for sale at Home Depot. It's rare. It's not sold anywhere. They only live for a few weeks. They flower, they set seed, and poop, and they're dead. And they just drop all their seeds. And then next year, if we get rain, there might be some more of them. So I've been doing research on this plant for a number of years. And in 2006, it was named after me. Okay, so moving on here. Now here are the parts of a flower. We don't have time to go over the parts. Normally in lab, we would dissect flowers because really it's super fun. But here are the parts. What I want to point out to you is that flowers can either have male and female parts in the same flower, or just one sex in their flower. So it could be on the plant somewhere they've got male flowers and female flowers, or like us, they have separate body forms. So you'd have some plants have male flowers and some plants have female flowers. And so you call that a male plant and a female plant, just like Ginkgo biloba does, just like we do. So the male parts are here. There's little stalks with this, what looks like two hot dogs on a stick. They're hollow, and that's where pollen is produced. And pollen's what I want to talk about. The thing in the middle here is the ovary on the bottom, this long neck called a style, and the top called a stigma. That's the female part of the flower. So in a male-only flower, there's no female part. So that center part's missing. In a male-only flower, sorry, that was the male flower. In the female-only flower, you only have the middle female parts and no male parts surrounding them. So it's really easy to tell if a flower is male, female, or both at the same time. So how do angiosperms work? Like this. So here's our drawing. Let's take a look here. So here is the anther. Now the anther produces pollen, which is up here on the right-hand side. Those little grains there that are falsely colored, kind of yellowy orange. Ignore the gray ones. That's something else we'll get in a minute. So the yellowy orange ones are grains of pollen. The pollen is released from the anther and makes its way to the female part of either the same flower, preferably not, or a different flower on another plant, or even a different flower on another plant miles away. Usually it's an insect that carries that pollen. They just get it all over their body, and as they go flower to flower, some of it falls off. Okay, so here, the pollen, there's the pollen there that's released, will land on this part right here called the stigma. Pollen sticks to the stigma. That's how we remember it. This little part right here. And that's what this picture in the upper right is. That's the top of a stigma, which is colored gray. And not in real life. That's how they did the photo. And then the pollen, which they colored the kind of a pale orangey color, that's the pollen. So it lands on the stigma. Pollen sticks to the stigma. And then the pollen grain, each unit of pollen is called a pollen grain, starts growing this funky tube, and that's it in the upper left of the screen right there. That's a pollen grain at the top, and there's the tube that it grows called a pollen tube. Well, there's a nucleus here, remember cells, there's a nucleus here that is responsible for making that tube grow, and right behind it are 2 sperm cells. So pollen contains this growth cell or vegetative nucleus and 2 sperm cells. So the vegetative nucleus makes that tube grow, and it grows through the style. Let me put my pointer here. It grows through the style, down through. So it penetrates the stigma, goes in the middle of the style, which is hollow, all the way down to the ovary where the ovules are. And here, this drawing at the lower left is the little piece that's around an ovule. The ovule is the oval part in the middle. The ovule has the actual cell that one sperm cell is going to fuse with, and we call that fertilization. Once fertilized, boom, we change the name from ovule and we call it seed, like this apple seed over here on the far right. All right, so that's how seeds form. Now, in the angiosperms, remember, angiosperms only, not only do we have seeds that are inside of an ovule, that's also, the seed is the ovule, excuse me. We have the ovules, seeds, that are inside of an ovary. Well, what happens to make fruit is that the ovary starts to swell, and we call that fruit, like this apple right here. So there's the seed I took out of it. Here's an apple I sliced open. You can see the seeds within. I'm sure you've opened an apple before. These parts out here, the stuff you eat on an apple, that's the wall of the ovary. And then the seeds are within. So the wall of the ovary gets thick. And if you get hungry while you're taking the picture, this is what happens. You get to see this. All right, looks like I've got a second photo up there. Whoops, somewhere. That is very strange. Hang on here. Oh, there's the seed. I don't know what happened. It floated away. Okay, so there's that. Well, why should we care about angiosperms? Well, first off, one of the most important angiosperms to humans is cotton. And this is cotton as it's gone to flower and it's set seed and its fruits have burst open. And inside there is this nice white fluffy stuff called comb, believe it or not, and that's attached to seeds. So each seed's got a bit of fluff, a bit of comb on it. And when the fruit opens up, it catches the wind and it blows away, right? The fluff catches the wind and has a seed attached to it. That blows away somewhere, the seed falls off and starts a new plant somewhere else. Long ago, humans determined that we can make stuff out of that coma, that really nice stuff, like shirts right here. That is the official Bug Bob shirt that's made of cotton. All right, we also do things like take palm fronds and make roofs out of them. Right? Like this nice thatched hut from, I think actually that is southern Mexico where that photo is taken. So that's another use of angiosperms because palms are angiosperms. All right, what else? Oh, fruit. All right, awesome fruits like the citrus at far left. By the way, where's citrus native to? Where do we get citrus from? Don't say grocery store, that would be silly. If you said China in Vietnam, you would be right. Citrus is Asian. It's not from here at all. It's from Asia. And then on the far right, we have things that are related to apples and pears, which are closely related. Yeah. And whoa, those are also from Asia. Yeah. Great fruit there. Bananas from Vietnam, all kinds of wonderful things. So angiosperms are really important to humans. Changing gears a bit, here is the Antelope Valley, California Poppy Reserve, State Natural Reserve. What a long name. There's their website in case you want to see it. You don't have to go there, but you might find some cool stuff. They actually did videos about more things at the reserve. I'm only asking you to look at the one, but if you want to look or you want to visit sometime, it's a very nice place. Take a camera. Okay, notice that its name, its scientific name is Eschozia Californica. I know it's a mouthful, huh? It is named for an entomologist, right? A bug biologist. I'm a bug and plant biologist. I'm an entomologist and a botanist. Well, he was an entomologist. His last name was Escholz. He was Russian. And he went to the Pacific coast here on a ship called the Rurik in, I believe, 1841 with his buddy Adalbert Camiso, who was a Spanish botanist. And when they got here, they got to the place that we all know as San Francisco. It didn't have that name then. They pulled in from the ocean and they saw the hills were gold with these beautiful plants, just like that picture above the banner for Antelope Valley Poppy Reserve. And so Adalbert Camiso very kindly named the plant for his buddy Escholz. Isn't that nice? And it's from an area called California, which itself is named for the legend of Califia. All right, let's move on here. Okay, so California poppy. This is a page out of my wildflower book. You can see a picture of it in the wild upper left corner from Casper's Wilderness Park out Ortega Highway. Fantastic park, great hiking, camping, mountain biking, horseback riding. If you have to bring your own horse though, they don't have them for you. Beautiful place, but you can see the peaks in the background. I love taking photos of the peaks with interesting stuff in the foreground. I don't know why, but I do. And you can see there are patches of California poppies down there. Upper right, same place, that is Casper's Park. I just turned my camera, looked down by me, and there were some beautiful poppies blooming right there. And then lower left, we have the poppy in bud. Now, below the petals, which I'm sure you know, are these structures called sepals. There's a collection of sepals. A collection of sepals is known as a calyx. It's a Greek word. So that in the far left, that green rocket-looking structure is actually the calyx, and the petals are inside, and the reproductive parts are inside of that. So as the flower starts to bloom, the petals start to push a little bit, and it snaps that little rocket ship, the calyx, off of the base. See a little pink base down there. And the rocket ship finally just works its way right off very slowly and then just pops off like a rocket ship. It doesn't go flying, but it just pops off. All right. And that's what they have to do in order for the petals to unfurl. So here in the next one to the right, by the way, that rocket ship has a technical name. The rocket ship of a poppy, of a California poppy, is called a calyptra. Lovely name. I really love some of these names. Okay, so there is an open California poppy. Lower right, you can see a cow poppy on the slopes of the peaks up there. That's from a different day. I went hiking up there. They grow in pretty dry soils up there, and the ones near the coast and lower elevations need more water. So they're actually slightly different forms of the same species, just like we are. All right, anyway, that's poppies. So what you need to do is go watch the video about cow poppy and then answer the questions that are in the lab. Not gonna read them to you because you're big people. Okay, and then we have let me take you a little bit of time, the looking at common California plants. So here's an overview of the directions. Consult your lab book, as I showed you a little bit in this video, for the scientific names. That's mostly what you need out of the lab book. You just need the scientific names. For each of the 12 plant species, write the scientific name below its common name in the table in the lab book or in the not the lab book. I misspoke. Write it in the table on the document that I made for you. So here it is. I'm gonna do this differently in a bit. I'm just giving you a quickie right now. There is the table. All right, this is from the document. I just printed it here at home. And that's where I want you to write the scientific name below the common name. I put the common name in, you put the scientific name below it. All right, and a couple of them have been done for you. All right, and then use what's called the Jepson E. Flora website. It's based at UC Berkeley, so you know it's good, to see drawings and photos of the plants. Don't use any other website. Don't you dare Wikipedia this, because it's not going to work and you'll make me unhappy by not following directions. So you need to use the Jepson E. Flora website only, and there's the link right there, and I'll take you to it in a minute. You search for the plant one at a time by scientific name. Don't search by common name. They don't have all the common names in the website because this is a scientific research website, and not all scientists use common names. We use scientific names, really. And so also there are multiple common names for every single thing alive. And so they would have to determine which common name we're going to put in the database because they refuse to put a bunch. So most of the things in their database have no common name in them. So you really need to use the scientific name. And the place you get that is, of course, from the lab book. We have the scientific names in there for you. And again, I put some in the table already because they're a little different than what's printed in the lab book. So in the table, after you put the scientific name in, you make a sketch of at least one leaf. Try to make it still attached to the stem. Okay, spend a little time on it. Don't just give me a blob because I will be very unhappy with you. So make me happy, make you happy, and spend a minute and make a decent drawing. And don't give me this, I can't draw. Everybody can draw. You just make a nice little sketch. You don't have to spend an hour on every one of it. I don't need you folks with super art skills. I know you're out there. You don't need to do stippling. You don't need to do 3D effects. You don't need to have a little twist of the leaf. You don't need to make it in color. You can if you want, that's fine. But don't worry if you are not thoroughly artistically inclined. It's okay. You just make a nice sketch. This is what we do in science. We sketch everything. Okay, so do that in the table. Most of them have a good drawing there. Excuse me. Most of them have a good drawing, and there's only one, maybe two that don't have a drawing for whatever reason. So you use a photo. So I'm going to take you to that website now and walk you through this process to show you how I want you to do this. Okay, so let me stop the share and run on into the website itself. Where are we at here? Okay. Oh, come on, website. Where are we at? There we go. Okay, so we're there. Let me go to the other tab. And the Zoom controls are in the way. So give me a sec. There we go. Okay, so here is, in fact, I'm going to shut the Ranger thing out of there. There we go. All right, so here is the Jepson E. Flora. The link was there on the lab. So what we have here is a place to search right over here for scientific names. Sorry about that, right there. Okay, way over here on the left, you put the scientific name in there. So for the very first one in our lab, I'm going to look, it says Laurel Sumac. Well, I look in my lab book for Laurel Sumac. It's on page 128, and its scientific name is Melasma laurina. So I get that, and I get my keyboard here, and I go M-A-L-O-S-M-A, Melasma laurina. I typed it right, and I click on the Submit Name button, and if you typed it correctly, it comes up with it. You highlight, see how it does have the common name in it. Not all of them do, but you hover over the scientific name and it becomes a hot link. You click it and it takes you to the Melasma laurina page. Let me see if I can make the text a little bigger for everybody so you can't see exactly. There we go. That's better. Okay, so it gives you some information. There's way more information here than I need you to have. So we're just going to hone in on what we really need. It gives you the where it lives and what part of the state. And watch this, super cool. It gives you a map of where it lives in these areas. These are the subdivisions of California in which this plant lives. It doesn't live anywhere else. And then here's a real map, satellite map, that shows you where it has been collected by scientists. All right, so you can actually look into that if you want. I'm not having you do that. What I do want you to do is take a look over here on the right. There's an illustration. There's a cluster of flowers. Yeah, they didn't draw the individual flowers because they're really small, but they did draw an individual fruit. That's kind of nice. And then here is a leaf. That's what we're after. So there's the leaf. Now what you do is you sketch that leaf into the Laurel Sumac box on the lab activity, all right? Not in the lab book, it's the lab activity, the document I'm having you do. All right, make a nice sketch of that, and that one's done. All right, then you go to the next one. Now, what's fun about this website, it was very clever of them, they put the search field on every plant species page as well. See right down here, it says name search. So I can click in there and I can type the next one down. I don't have to go back to the main page. I can just from right here search the others. So number 2 is lemonade berry. I look at my lab book and it says that lemonade berry is Rhus integrifolia, R-H-U-S integrifolia. See if I typed it right. I click on submit name. There it is. Lemonade berry is its common name, one of its common names. I click on the scientific name, and there is Rhus integrifolia. All right, has lots of information. It has photographs there. It has a map of where it lives, pretty much the same places as the one we just did, huh? There we go. Let's go back up, and we find, hey, now sometimes they have more than one species on the drawing. So you have to look very carefully. See how the one over here on the right is Rhus integrifolia? That's lemonade berry. That's the one you need to get. On the left is Rhus aromatica. That's not the one I want you to get. So don't draw that one. So you look at Rhus integrifolia. They always have the name next to it. And then draw at least one leaf for everything you do. So you can just pick one of these leaves. Like, look at that one way up there. Try to draw a little bit of the stem. That's always very helpful to make a leaf look more realistic. And then draw that leaf. And there's its veins too. It's a really easy leaf to draw. Sketch that on your lab page, not the book. And now you've got 2 of them done. All right, let's go on over and click here. Our third one is called sugarbush. It's related to the first 2 as well. And that one is Rhus ovata. I type that in and I submit the name and I get sugarbush. And I click on that. And there we go. And it gives us the plant. I'm going to scroll up here. There's some photos of it. It's got cute little pink flowers. Scroll on up some more and there's where it lives. Look at that. That's 3 plants in a row that live in the same place and nowhere else in the world. Okay, there's the satellite map there too. And we go back up here and we can see there's the drawing of the leaves. Look for the scientific name, make sure you have the right leaf, the right drawing, and then pick a leaf. Now this plant, there's actually 2 plants that are sometimes called taco plant because the leaves fold up like tacos, which makes me really hungry whenever I see this plant. They're kind of folded. That's a little harder to draw. Well, Emily Reed has already done the hard work for you. She already figured out a good way to draw it. Just copy what she does. But I don't want you taking her drawing and sticking it on the page digitally. Nope. I want you to draw it yourself. You can pattern your sketch after them, but I don't want you stealing their sketch and pasting it in the box. Nope. So make a sketch yourself. Just the stem plus the little stalk of the leaf and the leaf blade itself. That's enough. Just one, and that'll be fine. Look at that. We got 3 of them done. Okay, let's go do, oh, finally something different. Here's California sagebrush. So I go on over here and I go Artemisia Californica. Make sure you type slowly, otherwise you might get it wrong. Notice how my web browser wants to correct my spelling of Californica and turn it into California. If I accept that, it will not find it because that's not its name. So I'm going to say nope. Double check my spelling, click submit name, and there it is, Artemisia Californica. Now, a little bit of Scientific nerdism here. See how there's 2 entries for Californica? Well, there used to be a kind of a form, a local form of it called Variation insularis that lived on the Channel Islands. It's still there, but someone decided, you know, let's not call it that anymore. So they listed it as a synonym. Ignore the things called synonyms. That's just ultra nerdy stuff for we botanists. So you click on Artemisia Californica and you get the entry for California sagebrush. Notice that it also gives you the plant family name. So if you want to know something about the plant family, the Asteraceae, the sunflower family, you can click on view description and it will give you all of this good stuff. And look, there's the common name of the family, the sunflower family, and a huge description, because this is a really technical family and is very difficult to identify. All right, so I'm going to close that description, go down here and look, there's Artemisia Californica. You can read about all kinds of stuff. I go on up here and there's its map. Aha, so it comes up from San Diego all the way up to San Francisco Bay, but kind of just only along the coast. Scroll on over, there's the satellite picture. Go on up, there's some photographs for you. And here we have Artemisia biennis, not the right one. We go over here to Artemisia Californica, there it is, and look at its leaves. Its leaves look like little feathers. They have these branches. They're actually very soft and thread-like, so they normally hang down on the plant. So you want to find the stem, there it is, and draw that one leaf. Don't just draw one little thread. That's not the whole leaf. The thread is divided like your hand is divided into fingers. Their leaves are divided into these pieces here. So pick one of these 2 leaves and draw it still attached to the stem. See, not that hard. Okay, I'm going to jump down to Coastlife Oak because in our lab book, they only gave you part of its scientific name, and I filled in the rest of it for you. Okay, so its name is Quercus Agrifolia. Quercus is an old Latin word that means oak tree, because that's what this is. Agrifolia, but there's multiple forms of Agrifolia. Here locally, we have Quercus Agrifolia variety Agrifolia. So the normal form, if you want to picture it that way. I'm going to click submit name. We're going to see something a little different here. We see multiple entries. So now you go, well, remember I told you ignore anything that says synonym. So we know that's not the right one. We can click on Quercus Agrifolia, which is in our lab manual. That's okay. Or we can click on one of these other ones, but we don't know if we have it right. Well, I put in the table the name of the form that's here in Orange County, which is Quercus Agrifolia variation Agrifolia. You can either click on just a simple species name here, but I want to show you what happens if you do. All right, I'm going to go there. Here's Coastlife Oak, which is also called Encina. You ever wonder where the city of Encino up in LA gets its name? That's the Spanish name for Coastlife Oak. And we scroll on up here and we see some photographs. We see a map. We see the satellite map and we see no drawings for it. Oh, Professor Allen lied to me. He said there's drawings for these things. I didn't lie. Look right here. Notice how the next taxon, the next species listed is Quercus Agrifolia variation Agrifolia, which I told you is the right one. So I can go click on that, or I can pop up this pop-up list here and choose any other species of oak. Like here's Agrifolia, here's variation Agrifolia, variation Occidenia. So I'm just going to do one way. I'm just going to click next. And here we have variation Agrifolia. That's the one I put on the table for you. Scroll over and look. There is a drawing of variation Agrifolia, and there's a drawing of variation Occidenia, which doesn't live here. We have variety Agrifolia. So this one here. And there's our leaf right there. And Coastlife Oak is a really cool plant. Excuse me. It has these little yellow hairs under its underneath the leaf at the base of the veins. We call them hairy armpits. So the saying is Coastlife Oak has hairy armpits, and that's where they are. So make sure you draw in some little hairs there. Okay, so we found that one. Now our next plant after that is California scrub oak, Quercus Berberidifolia. So if we kept going, clicking next, 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 we'd find Berberidifolia or we can just pop this up and go, oh, there it is right there. Boom, and I'm at Quercus Berberidifolia. Now, its common name is normally said to be California scrub oak. See how they only put scrub oak here? Lots of different species have the common name of scrub oak. Yikes. That's why common names are not terrific. They are used, they're reused all the time. And so it's best to put in its more narrowed, more individual, more unique common name of California scrub oak. So I'm going to scroll this up a little bit. I'm going to move over and go, aha, here are some drawings. And they're showing two species. Quercus Agrifolia is on the left side, so ignore those. And then over here, we have Quercus Berberidifolia. So pick one of these leaves. Like that one's really good. This one's really good. They're showing you a variety of leaf shapes, but notice how they've got these big old lobes and teeth on them. And this plant can kind of hurt your hands when you touch it. Okay, there is that one there. Then we're going to go look at same deal. We've got coastal California buckwheat. Let's go do that one here because it's a little confusing as well. So we're going to go Eriogonum fasciculatum. Double check, see if I spelled it right. Yay. And you're going to get a big old list here because there are many, many regional forms of California buckwheat or Eriogonum fasciculatum. So again, if I just click on the scientific name here, sorry, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get lots of photos and maps, but notice I'm getting no drawings because they're not going to show you the drawing for that. They need to show you the exact drawing for the form that you're after. Well, as I put in your table, our form locally is, actually, we have three forms. We have three forms of Eriogonum fasciculatum, but one of them, the one I want you to look at, is the one that's closest to our coastline, and that's the, it's called the nominate form, Eriogonum fasciculatum variation fasciculatum. So I'm going to click on that and go to that, and notice how its common name is coastal California buckwheat. And I'm going to scroll over and see that there is no drawing of the leaves for that. How weird is that? Okay, now I told you this one's weird. Now we're going to have to do is look for other Eriogonum fasciculatum and try to find a drawing of it. So here, this one here, now you wouldn't know this, but variation flavoridi is only found in the Sonoran Desert, like Anza-Borrego Desert State Park. Let's not do that one. Let's choose another. Here's variation foliolosum. Let's just see if that's drawn out here, and look, that it is. Okay, so variation foliolosum and polifolium, both of which are here in Orange County as well, are drawn here. And I know it's kind of a weird one, huh? It's kind of hard to see what's going on with those leaves. Well, they're really short and narrow, and they're in bunches. And so you really need to see it better. So what I am going to do, I don't have it here. I thought I printed that. I did not print a drawing. I had made a drawing of this in my wildflower book. So I think what I'll do is when I'm done sharing this part, I'll share with you the page of my wildflower book so you can see it. Go ahead and make a drawing like mine from my book. And I'll put it on screen here in just a moment. I told you it's kind of weird for the buckwheats. Let's go on. Toyon, wild cucumber, western poison oak. Okay, western poison oak. Oh, who doesn't love poison oak? Okay, I'm going to go toxicodendron. I'm going to see if it works by just typing in the genus, the first word. And there it is. It came up. And it's actually mentioned some more than one species, but some of them are synonyms and invalid names. So I'm going to click on western poison oak right there, Toxicodendron diversilobum. And here is its description. Here are photos. Here is its map. Yeah, it's everywhere except the deserts. And actually, it's in the far western edge of some of our deserts. So if you get really unlucky, you might run into it in a place that we really don't think it should be growing, but sometimes it does. All right, so there is that. And then here is the drawing, and there are its leaves. So Toxicodendron diversilobum, western poison oak, has one leaf divided into three subparts that we call leaflets. And there's a saying, so you remember, the saying is leaflets 3, leave it be. which means don't touch it, because it's got a toxin in it that causes allergic contact dermatitis, ACD, that is very itchy, causes blisters, big fluid-filled welts that itch, and then you scratch it and it pops the blister, which could scar. You wouldn't want that if it's somewhere on your face or your hands, but that happens. So you want to be really careful. You really want to recognize this plant. And remember how I mentioned that flowers can be either male or female or have both sexes? Poison oak, each plant has either male or female flowers. That means the whole plant is either male or female. But you have to look at their little bitty flowers to figure it out, which I don't recommend unless you have some binoculars or a camera lens with you. Don't get too close. Anyway, there's a leaf right there. So you want to catch the stem, draw that leaf, and there you go. And you've got poison oak done. Okay, so let us stop the share on that. Let me now grab my book. Pardon me while I turn my back to you just a minute. Move some stuff. The book is just right here, and I'll pop on the overhead camera so you can see what a buckwheat leaf looks like. So let me put that in frame, and you should take note of that. That is California buckwheat right there. That's it right there. Here's the stem, and then they have these little tiny knots on the side of it. We call them shoots or lateral shoots. They're little tiny shoots, and there's always one leaf coming out from the base of the shoot and 3 or more leaves coming from the shoot itself. See how this makes a bundle of leaves? Well, the word fasciculatum means bundle. And so California buckwheat has little bitty leaves in bundles or fascicles. That's why its scientific name is Eriogonum fasciculatum. Okay, so you can draw a little piece of the stem and then draw one leaf there, and I would draw the other 3 here too. You don't have to draw both bundles, but it would be nice. All right, and while we're here, since you're paying attention, here is poison oak. Yeah, that's my drawing of poison oak right there. So base your drawing on something like that. Might be a little clearer for you. All right, so pause your video and take a screenshot of it, or grab a smartphone and take a photo of it, and you'll have it. Okay, let's head on out over here. All right, let's see now. Did I cover everything we were going to do? I think we did. I'm just going to look at my lab again real quickly. Yes, we covered everything. So to summarize, I need you to read through my write-up on Gymnosperms and Angiosperms here in this new lab packet that you download. There are some questions buried in that, so I need those questions turned in. So just scan the whole lab, put your name on every page, and then go watch the video from California, the Antelope Valley California Poppy Reserve, and answer the questions that are in here about that, and then do the tables for those species of plants that we just did. It really won't take you all that long if you just stick to it. All right, grab yourself a snack and a soft drink, and you can have it done fairly quickly. All right, any questions? Anybody? Okay, well, that's going to do us for today. Thank you for stopping by. Bye-bye.